Welcome to Emergent Behavior, where we explore this moment in time just before artificial intelligence changes the world as we know it, where we talk to the builders and creators, entrepreneurs and engineers, where we ask questions to which we don't actually know the answers to. I'm your host, Prakash Narayanan, known on Twitter as AdaPi. Hello, and welcome to Emergent Behavior. I'm excited to have with me today Michael Lingelbach, co-founder of Hedra, an AI startup pushing the boundaries of video creation with a focus on unparalleled control and expressiveness. Michael's passion for storytelling shines through as he leads Hedra in developing cutting-edge AI models that empower creators. Their recent launch, Character One, is already making waves with its ability to generate nuanced, audio-driven, talking head videos with remarkable speed. In this episode, we'll explore the technology behind Hedra's innovative approach to AI video generation, including their use of audio as a primary control signal to drive character animation. The challenges of building realistic and controllable AI characters, from capturing subtle facial expressions to tackling the nuances of different animation styles. Michael's vision for a future of AI-powered storytelling, where creators can seamlessly blend real and generated content to bring their unique visions to life. The potential impact of accessible AI tools on the democratization of video production, empowering storytellers of all skill levels to share their voices with the world. Whether you're an AI enthusiast, an aspiring animator, or simply captivated by the creative possibilities of this technology, you won't want to miss this conversation. Michael's insights offer a glimpse into a future where the only limit to storytelling is the power of imagination. As always, if you enjoy the show, the number one thing you can do to support us is to follow Emergent Behavior on Apple Podcasts. Every follow massively boosts our reach. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at emergentbehavior.co to stay up to date on all our latest episodes, including my research and preparation notes for each podcast. And you can find me on Twitter at numeric8TEAPI. Without further ado, let's dive into the exciting world of AI-powered video generation with Michael Lingelbach. I am here with Michael Lingelbach. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it right.
And who is the co-founder of Hedra, which just launched today. Michael, what is Hedra?
That is a really good question. So at Hedra or Hedra, we have not fully decided yet. We are building essentially multimodal foundation models where we're trying to give creators a super high degree of control. So what we actually launched today is just a preview of one of our models. The cool thing about it is it's audio conditioned. So you can inject audio and the character learns to be expressive. They can sing, they can rap. But ultimately, like what we're trying to do is we're trying to have this omnimodal model coupled to a creation product where you can go in and say, like, I want this character to say this. I want this character to say this. I want them sitting at a table in these positions and realize your full artistic vision.
Let's take a step back there. It is a foundation model, right? It is an actual model. You're not wrapping anything else. It's a foundation model. And you guys have, it's a video foundation model. And I have some background of like looking at this stuff. Is it a diffusion model of some kind?
So yes, the current Fusion is in the diffusion class, but I won't say that all of our models are diffusion models.
Okay. So, and how, I mean, we've seen a couple of other releases, like Sora has been announced. I wouldn't say they actually released yet.
Looming.
Yeah, looming, right? So how is that? Are they also a diffusion model? Like, what is the difference?
Yeah, so Sora is for sure, a diffusion transformer. I mean, Kling is like a diffusion transformer. We don't know what Dream Luma's model is. Dream Machine. It could be like Video Poet, which is what Dan worked on before he joined Luma. It could be a diffusion transformer. But generally speaking, most of these models are language line models. So you get like some video data set and you either caption it or you have captions. You train the model to take text or a conditioned image plus text and turn it into a video. what we're doing at Hedra is we're thinking what are some other ways that we can teach these models to inject controllability layers. So for me, I care a lot about characters and subjects in worlds. So what's
Mhm.
always disappointing with me about these video models is that, you generate a character and that character's face moves randomly, their lips move randomly, their hair kind of phases in and out of existence. The Sora lady, if you look at her, her legs kind of merge together halfway through the walk. um, that's not what we really want for like the A roll footage. We want you to be able to go in and say like, I want this character to say this specific dialogue, and if I regenerate the video, they're still going to say that dialogue, and they're going to act expressively, even if we're generating the world that's around them as well. So that's kind of the
Mhm.
distinction between us and like the other sort of video companies is we're much more focused on this multimodal generation and control.
So, is it do you require this audio? So you have that audio and then you match the audio with the video. Is that some way to one way to look at it?
I think one way to think of it is more like a spatiotemporal control net. Like you can
Okay.
apply a signal on the video that guides the generated process. So like I think one thing that struck people about the model is, there are lip sync tools, right? Like Pika has like a lip sync tool. And the problem with the lip sync tool is the character's facial expressions, like how they strain their eyes, how they move their head. It's not really in line with what they're saying. Um, so it doesn't make it realistic. And if you really want to cross that uncanny valley, you really need to co-generate the character's expressions, how the character moves, even how they interact with the scene in
Mm-hmm.
line with the audio cues.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you feed in an audio, and you can even predict like the eye movement, for example, like
Exactly.
the facial features, how they might have drawn a breath, and the movement of the chest and lungs, etc. Like it kind of it predicts kind of the overall everything else that happens around that audio being generated.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the first things I was struck by when we made the very first version of the model, even in the earliest days, you could see that characters would take a breath, kind of whenever you heard that in the audio track. We actually, in our testing, one of the big limitations to our quality is actually the quality of the generated audio. So we've been working with 11 really closely to try to improve our voices, to add more controls and make them more expressive. But this is also a huge area of interest with us is like, can we do positional audio? If you have like a pin drop, will the character turn and react to it? And how can we build more of these control signals into our model to make more and more realistic A-roll footage?
Right. So one of the things that struck me is, so today you guys launched today, and today's launch was primarily a what I would call a talking head. So you can put in a photo or a drawing of an image of a face and an
Or a
audio,
dog?
or a dog, and an
Don't try
audio.
that. That we did not in distribution, but
No,
people are
not in
making
distribution.
stuff.
And then you have this you get the character talking, right? So
Hmm.
and it's funny because you guys launched a couple of hours ago, and I can already see, like, John Finger comes out and he says, like, oh, I can't wait for the performance piece, right? The ability to
Yeah.
perform, as in you can
Hmm.
speak in, and then the character can be animated based on your speech, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
one thing that I think there's kind of been a gap in like creating like these more controlled videos is the ability to sort of puppet characters. And like
mhm.
for faces, that means like, can you have an audio condition signal driving the video for a portion of the clip? And then can you have, for example, face control from like, yourself via the webcam drive
Mhm.
another portion of the clip? So we're really interested in ways that we can allow for these like multimodal cues, like a video of yourself, an audio clip of yourself with maybe some template of a character that's
Yeah.
consistent across videos, to let people start being more creative when they're creating this content.
So what struck me was, I had been doing these podcasts with an avatar for the last,
Yeah.
like, a couple of months, and it was basically motion capture. I had an iPhone pointed at the face, and then that was the only way I could get the expressiveness that I wanted.
Hmm.
And even then, the expressiveness was not quite there. Like I was using a MetaHuman, Unreal MetaHuman, and they have a limited number of capture control points that they capture. Right? They have I can't remember the base shapes or whatever they call them. And they divide like 130 or something, and it's very hard
Yeah.
to manipulate. Actually, it's very hard to manipulate because whatever capture you get, you end up realizing that actual expressiveness requires more movement, right? So I ended up like with the developers, like we ended up in Unreal and like we ended up like multiplying the jaw open, jaw closed by like 2x, etc. And facial, eyes open,
Yeah.
eyes closed, and it's all like independent little like there's like 200 little variables in there, and you go in and you fiddle around. And I was like, guys, is there no way of like automating this? Like, is
Hmm.
do you actually do this for every game and every movie and every time you use Unreal? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh. you know um
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I think so. The predominant paradigm that people have done for like motion capture and expressive
yeah,
characters has been you learn some sort of transform between like face A and face B.
yeah,
But like that can be really complicated because your face is really different than your avatar's face, right? Like different structure, different size. I mean, especially for like anime characters, right? Who not like you're moving at like infinite FPS and the anime character is moving at 15 FPS. So how do you
yeah,
match like not just how your face moves, but also the in context style of how that character should talk based on what they look like?
yeah,
And that's why we're really excited about what we're building. I mean, one of the main reasons we're excited about what we're building towards, because with our system, we can actually we know the domain of how like an anime character should talk. So if
yeah.
we run our model with the appropriate settings, you can reproduce something that's going to look like it came out of a show, which is what we're working towards, giving you the like average user the ability to create content that was just inaccessible before.
Yeah, and it's because a lot of people can do a voiceover, but doing actual animation is difficult, right? It requires quite a lot of skill. You can generate a nice image off of any image generator now, but animating that is beyond the I think ability of most people,
Hmm.
to actually do animation. It's actually a tough one, and I often wonder, a lot of people have interesting ideas, but it's
Yeah.
actually very hard to manifest those ideas in a creative product. It's very difficult, and you used to have this burden of like, oh, you know what, in order for me to create, and something like a 1 minute of animation is probably like like 5 days of work or something, right? Like it takes a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of effort, right?
I mean, this is why, a few weeks ago, ToonCrafter really blew up, right? Because tweening is a huge problem in the animation industry.
Hmm.
It takes a while to draw out the like in between frames between keyframes.
Right.
Um, but one challenge is, making the keyframes is still hard. That's why there's like a lot of promise in building these world models, right? Is because you start with a keyframe and then you can provide some type of control signal to get you to the next keyframe.
Right.
And for us, we think audio is a really great control signal because what is most of media but characters talking to each other?
Yeah, and it's also a lot of the expressiveness. I feel like we're gonna split into like very highbrow, well-produced content, which is like
Hmm.
almost like live level, and then you're gonna have like this broad mass of like where you have the real creativity, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't need a huge budget, but you have a lot of ideas that can get produced now, which were not able to get produced before, right? Which are kind of stuck, and now there's this whole like range of things where I know there's a lot of kids who grow up drawing anime, right? It's a very
Yeah.
common thing. Like you get like that one or two kids in your class who are like really good at drawing like a Gundam or something else, or like
I,
Neon Genesis.
I was not one of those kids. I
Yeah,
my drawing skills peaked in like second grade art class. I never
yeah,
migrated beyond stick figures.
right.
Um, I know, kind of ironic for a founder in the media space, but
But they are those kids that do those drawings. They then
mhm.
like to go from there to becoming like a full animator is a huge leap, right? And
Yeah,
and providing them the kind of tools, the creative tools to express that earlier on. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about the technology.
hmm
So let's maybe the background. So you and your founder you met at Stanford. Is that right?
yeah. We were friends from Stanford. Our labs worked pretty closely together.
And when did this idea come about? Like a couple of years ago? Like what happened? Like what was the driving force?
I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I've always been really interested in like producing like TV, media content. Like when I was a kid, I used to do acting, like in school
Mm,
plays, and I'm super into it. I was never very good. But I was always really interested in like, how do we build technology to make people who don't have artistic talent like me be able to get their stories out onto either the page or the screen.
yeah.
So I knew I really wanted to do a startup, and I took some time off from school during my final year. And then Alex had graduated, and I suddenly was like, these video models that are coming out, like I think Pika had probably just started their alpha. They had this like lack of controllability that I found really unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Like I always really wanted to get in there and be like, Wes Anderson would be really dissatisfied if you just kind of had to roll the dice on a video
Yeah.
model. I
Yeah.
wanted to direct the characters. I wanted to tell them like, how do you move in this scene? I want you to go
Yeah.
pick up a cup from a table. I want you to
Yeah.
like throw the glass at the wall.
Yeah.
And so I was really interested in taking some ideas from like more of the 3D space, like how we think
Mm-hmm.
about spatial configuration of objects and how we can represent characters consistently, and trying to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
build
Mm-hmm.
a video generation platform around that tech. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I think, we really kicked things off around August, and, started building the team, came up with a couple prototypes. And then, in the last several months, we just had some really cool exponential breakthroughs, which I'm super excited to share with people at a future date.
Mm-hmm.
But we just wanted to get something out there that people could use. So that's why we launched, the Character One preview, and it's free. It's
Yeah.
actually not our latest model. That's kind of a
Yeah.
fun fact. We're still working on trying to make sure that our next model is very aligned, and is
Yeah.
safe to release. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
the current focus of the team.
So character one is the first model you guys are releasing. It's
hmm
a so I've used like a WAV to lip before. I've
Yeah.
used a couple of the older technologies, but those were very focused on this idea of lip syncing, not really this idea of the world model kind of thing that you guys are
Yeah.
are, are looking at. And those would basically you get this kind of frozen face, and then you have like the lips kind of like moving. And so one thing I noted, for example, is that your characters tend to have some head and body movement even.
hmm
And so how what is the process for you to expand from that, the head, the talking head, to the body? Like, do you just like zoom out on the camera? Like what is that process?
Yeah, basically. I will say they're not actually talking heads right now.
Right.
That's maybe a spoiler. But yeah, I think for us, what it's about is like what this release was about the core model architecture, and a lot
Right.
of the asks that people have had. Like, I think the number one request we get is like 720p widescreen report. I think the number two ask is like motion puppeting. I think the number three ask has been making it work more reliably on like more shots. It's really just a
Mhm.
matter of compute and scale. And that's something that we know how to do.
The other thing I noted was that it's relatively fast. So I've been
Yes.
using Pika and Luma and Runway. I think Runway. I think the founder said something like it takes like about a minute for every 5 seconds or something, some number like that. Like
Yeah.
how long does it take you to generate like 5 seconds, a 5 second clip, let's say?
Well, Our models focuses on longer generations, so I
Right.
usually talk in terms of minutes. So
Right.
to generate a minute of content on an H100 when we're
Yeah.
not under demand, which I'm really sorry, we're working on that right now,
All right.
it takes about 90 seconds. And that's actually a number that we're looking to push up significantly in the coming weeks. Um, I think one of the advantages is you had these like Gen 1 style models that came out, or it's hard because Runway's model series is like Gen 2.
Hmm.
You had like the first generation like latent video diffusion models that came out, and then you had
Yeah.
sort of the like intermediates like Video Poet, and then you had like sort of, which is more like, I guess, a branch. And then you had these like diffusion transformers. And so we're looking at ways, how do you use like more novel architectures that have better inference performance that we can really get to the point where they're almost real time, so that when
Hmm.
users are in our system manipulating characters, applying dialogue, you don't have like these really long like 20-minute wait times for like a minute
Hmm.
clip of video.
Hmm. Yeah. So does that scale linearly? Is it like 1.5 seconds per second? Is that linearly or quadratically? Like how does that work?
Yeah, I think it's linearly. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, at some point you can feed a really long clip in, and then you give up testing because it just keeps working. So, like,
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to do is I make like a Suno song, and I'll make like a 3 minute or video. No, equal endorsement.
Yeah.
And then I'll just chuck it into the system, and then a few minutes, like 5 6 minutes later, I'll get back my clip, and it's great. And I think that's what I'm really excited about is, can we just let people not be restricted by the thought of, oh my God, this is going to take so long to generate and it might not look
Yeah.
good, but get people into a flow where they're operating in real time with these world models where they can
Yeah.
maybe do like a higher quality pass when they're like finally done, but be able to run
Yeah.
the model in a mode where you can get real time feedback while you're kind of controlling the generation.
That's amazing. So, um, what about like so right now? What resolution are you producing the videos at?
Yeah, so for the research preview, we're limiting people to 512 by 512.
512 by
Like,
512. Okay.
there's not really anything endemic to the architecture that prevents us from doing arbitrary resolutions. It's more
Right.
like we're just kind of focused on serving this to as many people as we can.
Right.
Um,
Right. So,
but oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking into adding arbitrary like tiling resolution support.
So it's basically arbitrary resolution, arbitrary viewport as well. Like you could do a long
Yeah.
viewport, short viewport, etc.
So one cool thing which isn't actually enabled in the web UI, which we cut, is you can move the character around.
Oh wow,
So we had like a version where you can actually position the character in like 3D space, move them forward and
wow,
in.
wow.
Um, this is something that like we thought was really cool, but then when we were testing it, a lot of consumers got kind of confused.
Yeah.
So we are planning to put this in a subsequent product that we'll be releasing.
Right. Right.
But yes, so you do actually have control over where the character is in the scene.
It's nuts. I remember there was a company called Litro. I don't know if you remember this. They had this light field camera.
Yeah,
They had
yeah.
yeah, and they this huge contraption in order to capture this, just the ability to move move in the photo, like left to right.
Such a missed opportunity. That technology is so exciting. I think for me, one of the things, like, I spent a lot of time talking to creators, and one
Yeah.
of the things I hear the most is like, when can we get camera control in these models? And people do all of these crazy tricks. Like with the Luma model, they do like FPV drone shot prompting. But
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people that are having issues getting the camera to like stay still and the subject to move. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we as companies really need to move towards building that controllability into like the models, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
really makes these things where people don't have to subscribe to like really high subscription tiers because they have to re-roll the model to get what they want, but where they can just
Right.
specify that at generation time.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of the video that we've seen is, as you said, high reroll number, right? The stuff
Yeah.
the stuff that goes out is actually has been rerolled like a lot of times. I think even Sora, I think their some of their clips, they had like professional producers and they re-rolled, and then they also did like some editing, post
Yeah.
editing in order to I think the Balloon Man clip had a red balloon in some of the clips, and they had to like change it to
Yeah, I mean,
yellow.
I've heard
So
similar
yeah.
things that they've had to like do. Like one of the reasons you put the balloon on the face is because not to look at the face. Um,
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, look, this is our first model. We're a very
Yeah,
young company compared to some of these companies, right?
yeah.
But one thing I will say is if you use our generate feature, we manually control where the character ends up, and it usually looks pretty good when you do the audio.
I see.
If you do upload a character, we auto crop it to try to make it good. But if you get
Hmm.
in like this target zone,
Hmm.
generally speaking, the videos just work. And our model's so fast, if you do have to re-roll it, I mean, one, it's
Hmm.
free. Two, it's like, 30, 40 seconds of your time.
Right. I noticed you guys have an image generator as well. And so the image generator, are you using a stable diffusion in the back end or using some other like thing? Did you create your own? Like how does that work?
Um, I don't want to give too many details on this because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
I will say currently we are using Stable Diffusion. One thing we have noticed is one of the huge limitations in doing any sort of image to video conditioning is the control and compositionality of the scenes.
Hmm.
Um, so we are very interested in ways that we can let users have a much higher fidelity of control in like how they compose their initial shot, like the character emotion, what they're wearing, like what's in the background. And I think this is going to require people to move off the SDXL class of models. And really, SD3 release, it's been a little bit mixed. I mean, we haven't really evaluated the model full like
Hmm.
yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but both from like a licensing perspective and from a like human perspective, which is obviously very important for us.
Yeah.
We really need a better base image model too.
Right. 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 Indeed. Indeed. Um, and how did you train the model, right? So what were the inputs? What was the like pre? Is that the pre-training process? What was
Mhm.
what was in there in that data set? Like, is it a like proprietary, non-proprietary, scraped, non-scraped, like public, etc.
Yeah,
How did that work?
we're not talking too much about the details of the model
Okay,
yet, mostly because we don't want to unveil any of our competitive advantage. I mean, I will
right,
say,
right.
um, we have a product coming out that I think might help unveil one of the ways in which we can create and augment data, but I don't want to
Hmm.
say too much about that product until we announce it. But you might have heard some of the speculation on like, you know, simulation simulators and how that can be
Hmm.
useful. And I think
Hmm.
that's like a very interesting idea that we're exploring.
Interesting. I did read some of the research on latent diffusion models. I think one of the papers had like Robin Rombach and the
Hmm.
ex stability guys now. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that they had worked on was kind of like driving simulator. Actually, they're trying to create like world models that can be used to train self driving cars. And they'd worked
Yeah.
on these like driving simulators. And I was very curious because that seems like a hard problem, like because you need the cars to be in the right place and not like morph, right? So
I mean, that's still the Achilles heel of any of these like video models. I mean, our model doesn't really show morphing except occasionally it will glitch.
yeah.
But for a lot of these video models, like you look at even Sora, like I mentioned, like the legs will melt together. Like for some reason, they really struggle with like horses. Like if you
Hmm.
ever watch a video model, this is one of my litmus tests. Watch the legs of the horse as they pass by each other. In a lot of generations, the legs will just switch places. Um, and yeah, I mean that happens with cars. Any motion is really likely to result in some sort of like temporal glitch.
Yeah. Um, a few questions for you. Like in your body models, how are
Mhm.
the hands doing? Like how do you get the fingers? Do you see morphing on the fingers, or how are the fingers doing?
Oh, I didn't know I said anything about the body models. Good. Yeah, I think that problem is extremely solvable. I think one of the advantages of like having our architecture where we can inject conditioning signals is a lot of these
Yeah.
problems that you have with a unconditioned generic video model kind of go away. Um, so we're
Wow.
pretty excited to expand from just our initial offering and kind of show people what we've been working on.
So I noted I've noted a lot of like the kind of more control net like animation
Hmm.
models have been coming out of China. So I've noted There was a Alibaba emote portrait,
Hmm.
kind of paper, but they didn't release a product and they didn't release the code. They have empty
Yeah,
GitHub repo with like 7,000
I
stars on
know.
it.
I know people are really mad about that one. They're mad about Animate Anyone.
Animate anyone? Yeah, that was it. That was another one. Why do you
I
think the
people.
Chinese are? Yeah, what's going on? Like what?
Yeah. I mean, I think that China as a country has really invested into artificial intelligence research. Like it has some
Yeah,
amazing universities like Peking, Tsinghua. A
yeah,
lot of my lab mates, came from Tsinghua, and it's
yeah.
just like they have very strong research programs, especially around generative media.
You're right.
And we have like multiple scientists that from China and that are
Yeah,
immigrating. So
yeah.
yeah.
But so they had these like papers, but they
Hmm.
kind of published the paper, didn't put out the code, and then it kind of disappeared. Like it's been 3 months and kind of silence. Like what like have they all been pulled into like other TikTok or whatever? Or like what's been going
Yeah.
on? Like what, or have they all like left? Like I don't know.
Well, like Kling, for example, is deployed in China. Like you can access
I
it with a
see.
Chinese phone number, and it's quite good. It's actually, I think it's definitely the best deployed video model in the world right now. Like minute
Wow.
rollouts, it's quite amazing. And
Wow. Wow.
you know, right now the Chinese and the American markets can be quite insulated from each other in some ways. Like a lot of
Hmm.
these, there's like a Chinese TikTok, right? There's Kling is not available to U.S. numbers. So I think part of it is just like these products just remain in like sort of the Chinese ecosystem of apps, and they're not really brought to the U.S. or Western markets. Um, but yeah, I do think China has been leading in deploying generative media solutions compared to U.S. companies.
That's interesting. I also note that a lot of they have been very persistent on trying to automate sales, like
Hmm.
the selling of product. They've been very focused on this idea that we need to get rid of like all of these influencers who are
Yeah.
selling product and replace it with like digital.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't see the role of generative media as being a replacement tool, but as a
Yeah.
creativity augmentation tool. Like, I think
Right.
a lot
Right.
of
Right.
I have noticed they have these digital influencers now in China
Yeah.
that are more based on, um, like the sort of last gen style models, like the sort of face replacement, not like ours,
Yeah.
which is more focused on like generating characters. These tend
Yeah.
to do extremely well. Like, people really love
Hmm.
these.
Hmm. Hmm. Right on. What is you've spoken a bit about this on Twitter. What is the
Mhm.
roadmap going forward for you guys? Like, what are the immediate next steps? Coming up.
Yeah, so I mean, we operate in sort of teams. So this is one core group's initial like training of our model. We have another group that's working on sort of expanding this beyond just faces, which I'm super excited to show.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then we're also looking towards full generative worlds. We do have a
Wow.
pretty exciting product in beta with some users right now that I'm very excited to talk more about. But
Hmm.
we're also just looking to like scale our model now because we think we cracked this like fast, consistent generation.
Hmm.
And for us now, it's mostly a matter of compute and time.
Right on. Um, and when like, are you going to be focusing on? I think when you say full worlds, like how does that
Hmm.
translate into a UI for the user? Is that going to be kind of a VR thing? Like how does that like I've like people have talked about worlds like a bit, but I'm not sure how the users will interact with it. How do you think? How what are you thinking about?
I mean, my dream is that we offer a platform where there are multiple ways for you to engage in content, right? Like, I think the way that you engage and interact with 2D content is very different than the way that you engage and interact with 3D content. For
Yeah.
example, what we've found in a lot of our testing is users love control, right? Especially
Hmm.
power users. But
Hmm.
a power user that is used to like a Blender or Maya or a 3D workflow is
Yeah.
very different in terms of how you have to offer a product to them than a user
Yeah.
that's interested in like, a Canva or a CapCut.
Yeah.
So for us, we have like a very quickly building team, and we are planning to offer tailored solutions towards different types of producers.
Hmm.
So in terms of like actually engaging with the content though, I love VR, right? I think it's super cool. I've owned so many headsets, but I just don't
Hmm.
think that the market is quite there yet for us to
Yeah.
personally invest at this point.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but at the same time, the technology we're building, I think, is going to be extremely exciting in the future. But for now, we're
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
focused on 2D consumption of media and how do we make people be able to control that maybe with 3D or be able to control
Right.
that in a very intuitive way. But ultimately, like we'll create and distribute content within the 2D space for now.
Ah, amazing. Um, and I think, when you think about, um, you know, uh, the next challenges that you have, like, is it hiring? Is it, what are the big things that you need to nail in the next, like, 3 to 6 to 9 months that you're thinking about right now?
Yeah, I mean, for us, a lot of it is like scaling the team, scaling compute,
Hmm.
scaling resources. Like
Hmm.
we started as like basically four people,
Hmm. Hmm.
working in like out of my apartment, and now we have like
Hmm.
an office. We've got users now. Users are bombarding us with feedback and questions and like ideas. And so part of it is like we had our internal roadmap and like how we want to scale and build out these models. And
Hmm.
now we are also trying to figure out to what extent do we optimize the current versions of the models to serve all of these requests while we're simultaneously scaling up the team, scaling up
Right.
compute, and moving on to these more ambitious versions of our model to serve our ultimate dream, which is building this like full world builder with characters interacting with the scenes and dialogue and
Hmm.
all these stuff
Hmm.
that I
Hmm.
want as a storyteller to tell my
Right.
content.
Right. Right. How does when you move from one generation to the next, what changes? Is it just the size of the model, the data, the amount of data
Mhm.
that you have available to train on? Like how does that work? Like from one generation to the next,
Yeah, I think it's a matter of size, data, compute. There's things like how
size,
many
data, compute.
GPUs, batch size, for example, does a lot to stabilize training of these models. For a lot of us, a lot of our models, like what we're really interested in experimenting with, is like like inputs other than text. So part of that is like how do you design the training regimen? Like when do you inject that control? Like how do you inject that
Hmm.
control? How do you do it in a way that doesn't impact the speed or the quality of the model? Um,
Hmm.
like one analog that I think is kind of interesting, and you'll see this actually on our website if you do it. Um, our image generation actually looks worse than it could be because we inject a control over the pose of the character. And a lot of times,
Hmm.
historically, there's been like a trade off. When you inject something like a control net into a diffusion model, oftentimes by
Hmm.
constraining the model, you get a less aesthetically satisfying result. So,
Hmm.
a lot of the research we're doing internally is like, how do we have all of this control, but actually still give you that like really high quality, good looking result
Hmm.
where you're not like, it's not like a zero sum game.
And how does the user feedback feed into that? Like let's say the users say like, hey, everything else is great, but whenever I try to do like,
Hmm.
Little Red Riding Hood or whatever, like it doesn't work, right? Like does that
Yeah.
mean you go out and you find more samples of like Little Red Riding Hood based stories, or how does that work in terms of like, nailing like some requests like that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I do think a lot of this really just comes down to scaling models.
Oh, really? So
Hmm.
it's just like, if you expand the size of the model and the data, some of the odd little like niches which are, you're stuck at, just kind of get
Um,
resolved.
yeah, I mean I do think, for example, there are other things that a lot of times people don't really think about. Like, for example, different styles of non-photorealistic content has different frame rates that it's rendered at. So
Hmm.
something people have been asking us for is like a variable frame rate, which is Mala can totally do, but we just haven't exposed yet. So we render by default at 30 FPS because that's
Yeah.
about what cinema does. Like usually, like I
Yeah.
think 24 FPS, but like
Yeah.
anime renders at like 15 FPS, or something like that Spider Into the Spider Verse renders at a
Mm-hmm.
lower FPS with like a specific
Mm-hmm.
cadence of the frames. Whereas some
Mm-hmm.
people, if you're doing like a Twitch live stream, that's rendering at like 60 FPS now. Um, So oftentimes it's not just like the capabilities or diversity of what the model can handle, but
Yeah,
also a matter of like what are you actually rendering out? How are you color grading? All this other stuff that goes into making content that aligns with what people's expectations are based on what they've seen.
right on. I, let's say you are generating, let's say, a 30-second clip. Is it possible to
Hmm.
generate just like the 5 seconds first, view the first 5 seconds, and then kind of continue from there? Is that like, or do you need to generate all 30 seconds at once in order to get consistency across?
No, totally. In fact, I think that the ability to sort of rewind and generate counterfactuals is an extremely powerful creative aid. And it's something like, I mean, we have great designers, and this is something they're really excited about. Is like, can I generate with our world model a one scenario, and then be like, oh no, I wish the character had walked this way, and kind of annotate that and describe that to the model, and then do this sort of iterative like keyframe something, keep a character, keep an identity, and generate more in a way that creates a creative flow that I don't think is currently on the market.
Right on. Um, you've been working on the product for a while now. You've just launched. You've had some user feedback. What is the detail of the product that which has already been exposed, which you think that is not like external users haven't much commented on, but you and the team have
Mhm.
put a lot of thought and care into?
Um, I think one thing that's not commented on yet, and I don't know if people just haven't really discovered this,
Yeah,
is the lighting and the hair.
the lighting
So
and the
one
hair.
problem with like these non-video foundation model approaches, like
Hmm.
inverse GAN approaches, like mega portraits, like Vasa, is
Hmm.
because these models are like just like they're kind of really task-specific models. When you have like a spotlight shining behind a character, oftentimes you'll
Hmm.
get weird artifacts around lighting. For us, one thing we care a lot about is if we situate a character in right now the image, but soon like a video, and there's a spotlight shining on that character, is that going to accurately model on their face, or is the character just going to be totally lit in a different way? This doesn't move with the lighting. So I have some really cool videos of me where like we move me and we have the light change position, and you can kind of see that that the lighting is actually modeled on the face and like shines through the hair. I think hair and cloth and like earrings are another thing that the prior gen of like non-foundation models didn't do well. Like if you watch a video of a character who has earrings, you'll see that they move like with the physics of the character because it is doing like quote unquote world modeling. And same with like cloth. Like cloth will wrinkle, the hair will compress, the strands of hair will sway as they move, and all these like details like coupled with things that we also do well like the micro expressions, like if you look at faces
Hmm.
like you can see the
Yeah.
lines behind the mouth change. That all adds up to what we need to break this uncanny valley barrier that's really been holding back like generative media for a while. um, so yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the all of the like small details that I think these class of models do well and will continue to do well as we scale them are the main things that I'm excited for people to explore more. And if you want to see a good example, check out like some of Uncanny Harry stuff. He's been doing amazing work. I mean, I'm seeing a ton of stuff on Twitter. I'm like need to go check my DMs, but uh, I think it's really cool what people are making.
Yeah, I think like this was I feel like this was like the missing link because
Yeah,
you've had these like you've had what I call like music video type things, right? You've had like
yeah,
short 10 to 15 seconds, nice, but you can't control much. I saw a Luma one where it was a Monsters Inc. kind of clone, but
yeah,
there was a long write up. The guy had like gone frame by frame, and like the monsters were different monsters in every frame, and
yeah.
and the fact was that it was hard for you to like actually have this kind of control that you had. So you had these interesting demos, but not the ability to actually create something more meaningful out of that. And so yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny that a lot of like these AI music videos historically, I mean, I'm sure it's gonna, it's all gonna change soon, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're making advances, other people are making advances, but like a lot of AI music videos didn't have singers, right? And like I think that's one of the cool things. Like okay, here's another thing that people haven't fully discovered yet is like it's really fun to make memes, like new memes with our model. Like I
Right.
love the high impact stuff. Like we're building for the storytellers, but like
Right.
I made a talking potato with our model, and like
Yeah.
our whole team just lost it, and we just send
Right.
each
Right.
other potato memes now.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
I was saying, I think it's getting cool where we're getting to the point where like the same kind of models can produce like really beautiful, striking results in the right hands, but also can just like make funny, entertaining content that just brings joy to people
Yeah.
when someone else looks at it.
I also found the latency because I'm a big believer that more important than a lot of other things is latency. Latency is actually like
Yeah.
I would say way more important than many other things. You can get away with a
Hmm.
lot if you have like low latency. And
Yeah.
and and so what I found was just the reaction time between seeing something on social media, putting that into into Hedra, let's say into the thing, and then like typing out some message that you wanted the character to say, and then taking that out and sending it back to someone. That cycle time, right? I think it was down to like 3 to 4 minutes for me, but you have a queue, etc. You,
Yeah.
but
Sorry.
getting that,
We're trying.
yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, this is the early launch, but if I tried to do it with Luma, it would take. I mean, I've basically like gone away and like come back in like 15-20 minutes, right? It's
Hmm.
just a little bit too long for you to kind of like wait there for the thing to generate. So I found that
Yeah.
I could respond to someone with an animated meme. So that was interesting.
I mean, this is something we knew as a team, and like part of this
Yeah,
was like when we were building out the model, and we knew what the capabilities of our architecture were. We knew that one
yeah,
of our advantages was going to be speed, and it's just going to get faster. Um, but also, like we knew that one of the huge off-putting elements for consumer AI is the wait times,
yeah,
and for us, since we have like a mobile website and we have a desktop website, we wanted the responsiveness of the system, especially like we're working on scaling it, but especially as we get more and more GPU capacity,
yeah,
to be such that you could really reactively respond with a meme in the span of a couple seconds. Like when
yeah,
this before today, when you went to generate a video with our platform, you entered in some like 20 words, you'd get back the video in like 5 to 10 seconds. And I think
yeah.
that's really the kind of responsiveness we need to be getting to with these models, even the big models. And I totally think that's doable.
So one of the there's this guy called Nikita Beer. He's one of the
Yeah.
great consumer guys of our I think of the last like 10 years. He sold two companies, one to Facebook and another one to Discord. Same company, but it's a polling
Hmm.
like teen
Yeah,
polling app.
I've seen it.
Same company. He sold it twice. But he has this thing about like you know, if you can just like one of the key barriers to entry for Instagram or TikTok is you need to create content. And creating content with
Yeah.
your friends necessarily means getting together with them, like getting in the same room
Hmm.
or interacting with them and creating something. Whether you're at a picnic or whatever, and you have to be in the same place. You got to take those photos, etc. You got to do those dances. And so one of
Yeah.
the things is like, is that, oh, you have to learn the dance, which is, for me, like
Hmm.
impossible. Right. So one of the things is, can that be automated in terms of like, hey, I have a photo of myself, but I'm not going to learn this dance, but I want to see what's like for me to do this dance or for me to say this monologue or do something right with my friends. Like, so will people be able to like do that? Like, take a photo of themselves and like, transform that experience into a social experience with someone else.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's already a couple AI models out there that can do dancing. I mean, the quality is like okay,
Yeah,
but I mean, we're working on some stuff that's pretty exciting.
yeah,
That's all I'll say. But I believe that the day in which you need to pick up a camera if you want to make some sort of generative content for social media is coming to a
mm,
close. Um, I think that there's always going to be a place for real influencers, and that will be the
yeah,
majority of the content. But oftentimes, like when I see a lot of stuff on TikTok, it's a video where a character will like they'll record a video like this and they'll record a video like this with the same person. And like in a couple weeks, you can generate that with our platform, and I think it's going to be pretty uh, powerful, especially when you can make versions of yourself like characters like we have a feature that's not out yet, but a stylization feature that like lets you change yourself into like an anime character, or like change yourself into like a knight or into like a spaceman. I think that is very powerful in letting you like create like stories featuring yourself, featuring generated characters, stuff you just would not be able to do unless you have a background in VFX. You can do in a couple seconds in our platform.
Amazing. Can you? So would you be able to change the background? So change the background, change where you are, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can already do that today with our platform because
Yeah.
you just go into Photoshop, like chop yourself out, put yourself in. If you're a more experienced user, send you a bunch of
Yeah.
comfy UI workflows that I use for my own personal projects
Right.
with like in painting, relighting. But we're bringing
Yeah.
all of that features into the platform. We need engineers, so apply. We're
Right
hiring.
on.
If you're
Right on.
really
Right
into,
on. Right
generative
on.
media, JavaScript, wizard, like seriously, just email me.
Right on. Super exciting. I think it's going to be interesting to see what people. The best part about all of this is that since it's a social tool and it's open release, a lot of the tools are not announcements are not full open releases, right?
Oh, that drives me
So
crazy. I
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I'm the kind of
Great.
guy, we just put our heads down, we go build something really amazing,
Right.
or well, this is a preview.
Right.
I would like to say we go build something that we think people will find use with, and then we just
Yeah.
release it. Um,
Yeah.
so actually, speaking of the social element of the platform, we haven't really advertised this, but we do have this remixing feature, which I think is pretty cool. So if you
Hmm.
create a video and you hit the top right in the tile, you can hit share. And if you switch it from
Hmm.
private to public, you can actually
Hmm.
send that link to someone and they'll get access to the original audio, image. It's a great way to like collaboratively create stories or characters. Like
Yeah.
I think I sent you the potato that's in our
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
launch video,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
takes like 30 seconds to just like riff on that and create new content. And that's something we're pretty excited for people to play with.
Yeah, I think one of Mark Zuckerberg's observations is that there is a social pattern, right? Like there's
Hmm.
some social pattern, and every 5 years there's a new social pattern, and whoever secures that social pattern, like you have this ramp. And one of the social patterns, for example, was Snapchat. Snapchat, the disappearing message, was that the initial social pattern that was there, and then they just grabbed onto it, even though it wasn't really fully
Yeah.
disappearing, and it's kind of like fake disappearing for a while. But then,
Yeah.
but then they kind of grabbed onto that idea and kind of slowly made it real, and et cetera, et cetera. So it sounds as though like if you have that kind of like one social pattern that whether it's the remixing or putting people in different things, you that there might be that opportunity to find that social pattern there. And if you have that, then you have this trajectory that basically becomes super viral, right? So
We're very aware of the cool patterns that can develop in our workflows.
yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to empower collaborative storytelling. I think that's probably one of my most excited things is how can we kind of change how stories are told? Like right now, you go pick up a camera, you record something. It's
Yeah.
very high accessibility bar, and AI is plummeting that bar. And now that we have the ability to have these expressive dialogue characters, my
Yeah.
goal is like you should be able to create that with your friends.
Yeah.
You should be able to put together a story in minutes that you just never would have done before, because are your friends gonna are you gonna be able to find actors as an individual person to create content? You can generate characters now and you can tell
Yeah.
things you just couldn't do. And if we find ways to make this really easy for people to collaborate from both a product perspective and from our model perspective,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what people can make.
So I had another question for you. Like one of the things that
Hmm.
I found with I was using a headshot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, like 18 months ago, there was these headshot apps where you can put in a headshot of you, and like you kind of they will create headshots for you, and you needed earlier days, like I think Level CO did this where. Uh,
Hmm.
anyway, you needed like 20 or 30, 40, 50 photos of yourself for them to
Yeah.
basically fine tune a model for you, right? And now you're down to basically a single, like you guys can do a single image, and then you can do all of this video from there. One of the
Right.
things that I found with the earlier generation, the headshot apps, was that you had a little bit of uncanny valley, even though they had 40 or 50
Hmm.
photos of you. After you generated, if you showed it to people, especially if, it depended on, and I found this very weird thing. The
Yeah.
uncanny valley was bigger the closer you were to the person. So if you showed it to like your nephew or niece or whatever, or your mom or dad, they'd be like really freaked out.
Yeah.
They're like, this is creepy. This is really creepy.
Hmm.
If you showed it to like someone like an acquaintance, they were like, oh yeah, that looks like you like 3 years ago. You have this
Yeah.
like this uncanny valley which ranged depending on how well they knew you, right? So
Hmm.
I noticed with you guys, for example, like the current thing has only one photo. Is there something that you think you might need more photos at some point, or you is that something that you would look at, or how does that proceed for you?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I will say is there's nothing about our model that prevents us from taking in like video or more input data. This
I
is just
see. I
something we
see.
really haven't exposed or
I
optimized for
see.
yet.
I see. I
Um,
see.
Let me give you a good thought scenario as to why,
Yeah.
yes, this does make sense.
Yeah.
I, so for our current release, the reason it's so fast and easy is because it's
Yeah.
just one photo, right? You
Right.
generate in a couple seconds, boom, you're done. So if
Boom.
we were
Right.
like,
Right.
oh, if you want it to look better, you can have 20 photos. We do think this creates a little bit of UX friction that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But from a model perspective, let's say I have a tattoo on the back of my neck. There's no way
Yeah.
our model is going to know that you have a tattoo on the back of the neck from just a
Right.
photo of your face. Like,
Right.
how could it? So if you really care about like having that text accurate when you turn around, of course we're going to have multiple like multi-view stuff. And
Yeah.
we do actually have stuff in deployment where we can take in and create like 3D full scenes and data, and that does solve that problem. But figuring out a way to make that an extremely friendly experience where the average CapCut and Canva user can just pick up and be productive
Right.
is like a huge product and UX challenge that our team is really excited about solving. But
Right.
this we have to go in steps, and this is our first release.
So it really sounds as though it's like a world to world kind of model, right? It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can take you said you can take in video, you can take in multiple. It's actually a world to world. Like you can take in like different views of the world and kind of generate different views of the world. Is that one
Yeah,
way to look at it?
I mean, people. There's some videos of other pre-release products that are now floating on Twitter from our team that you can go and try to find. But yes, this release, we are very focused on our character narrative. We think this
Right.
is something people are going to have a lot of fun with. We really want to see
Right.
what they create. But, our big push is, how do we go just beyond? Start with really good characters, or
Mm-hmm.
start with decent characters. Let's say decent
Mm-hmm.
characters. Make those extremely good, but at the same time, put them in worlds and get them to do
Right.
things and interact with that world. And I think that's really where the magic starts happening. And that's what I'm super
Right on.
excited to build.
Right on. Awesome, dude. Awesome. Like, okay, so we're coming to the end of our hour. Like, is there anything that I didn't like ask that you would like me to ask? Like,
It's probably nothing that I want to share this time, but super excited to chat in the future.
right,
I'm just,
right,
I'm really excited to see. I mean, I have like 40 Twitter notifications I gotta go check, so I'm also
right.
horrified because people have been sending me like weird dog memes is like the thing that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
getting a lot of now.
Right on,
But
right
yeah,
on.
our team's just super excited to keep building and putting out more models. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
thanks
I'm
for
I'm
thanks for
excited
having
for you
me.
guys. I'm excited. So it's going to be interesting to see what you guys do. And so yeah, good luck, man. Cheers.
Thanks. See ya.
Emergent Behavior is a part of the Turpentine Network. For our full newsletter, visit emergentbehavior.co. For more Turpentine podcasts and sponsorship inquiries, visit turpentine.co